of maybe you're not just fighting the creatures of this area, you're actually fighting the land itself and what it is capable of. And going into our third point of that, dynamic battlefields. So, you know, not just dynamic. But that whole aspect of maybe you're not just fighting the creatures of this area, you're actually fighting the land itself and what it is capable of.
Yeah.
Could be, you know, we had talked about this prior. You did this to Steve, Cody, of having a big pollen storm come through, or, you know, you at home could use a sandstorm, anything that, you know, kills vision, right?
Yeah.
You know,
and there's no you know, I think it's important. I think it's important to not. You don't have to box yourself in. You don't have to just. This is the battle map I made. This is it. This is all the space there is. That's all that can be done. I think you guys would benefit. Everybody would benefit from allowing a little bit of wiggle room around that, and allowing that, you know, that situation with Steve, I mentioned with the pollen, right?
Yeah.
The orcs were attacking this cabin that they were at. The party knew there was no way they could withstand the amount of enemies that they were being sent towards them. They engaged them outside of the cabin. They met them. They killed some of them. They realized they're going to keep coming. All the while, this storm is moving in. The party decides, we have to move to the next location. We can't stay here.
Yeah.
So they moved from that battle map and they went into the forest. Well, the storm picks up in the forest. It starts blowing this crazy amount of thick orange pollen out of these pine trees. It's this huge old growth evergreen forest in my world. And it starts blowing all this pollen out to the point where the players can no longer see in front of them. And now I'm having combat take place where players cannot see their friends. They can't see their enemies. They're running into each other. A chase sequence occurs. It gets finally to a point where there's a cabin, there's a bridge. The players get to the side. They start breaking the bridge to prevent the orcs from getting past them. It was a memorable moment. And it was something that it didn't have to just remain at the cabin, remain in that square box. And you have to sit here and roll dice and hit each other with imaginary weapons until it's over.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
Yep.
You can do so much more.
Yeah.
And I see people, we talked about it with the monsters in the last podcast about making monsters and creatures. If you throw something that's too powerful against your players and you don't want to have a TPK because, oh, you messed up and you made this monster too powerful, wiggle room your imagination and change up your battlefield. Make something happen. Make the forest floor start caving in. An earthquake happens or a landslide moves in. You can have all sorts of things happen that just changes the field of battle. It's like watching Empire Strikes Back when Luke and Vader are fighting all the way out to the outside of Cloud City.
Yeah.
You know, and the battle just keeps going like through the whole scenario changes.
Yeah.
And it makes it more dynamic. It makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be added on to that point before I said about even for non-combatants, that there needs to be something on the battle map in the world you're presenting that non-combatants can do as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And there could also be elements, not even just like landslides or fires or things. There could just be other elements that aren't the monster that you're fighting, the
bears
you're fighting, that are part of the fight that people could interact with, that could, you know, help make it, you know, help change the way that combat goes. One of the more recent things that I can think of is one of the first times that I was playing in the current campaign, we had to go up against this goddess that was getting power from a sacrifice. There was a big pyre with a bunch of people being sacrificed on it. And my character, first thing at the very start of
Cultists
combat,
don't do things like that. Not in my world. That's
not at all.
No.
But the first thing that I did was I created a sleet storm or an ice storm to kill the fires, because that's one of the effects of it, which stopped all the sacrifices from being killed. And if I hadn't done that, if that hadn't been a factor in the fight, then I would imagine that fight would have gone a lot worse. There would have been a lot bigger stuff that would have happened. But because I stopped the sacrifices, that God didn't get that power, and because of that, that helped the party a lot. And there's stuff like that you can include in your combat. There can be like stuff around the battlefield that empowers the monster, that combatants can go, that people can be distracting the dragon while you're going around attacking these crystals that are giving it strength or whatever. And like there's stuff like that you can do in your combat to break things up and make things more interesting than just being like, well, everyone just goes and wails on this dragon until it dies. It's like, well, it won't die until all these things are destroyed, so somebody's got to go around destroying them while everybody else is wailing on it.
But you bring up a good point, and you were absolutely right about that. You stopped the sacrifices, which was that was basically the battery.
Yeah, exactly.
For the spell that the goddess was trying to do. These are elder gods that have a lot of their power has left them. So they're trying to feed themselves with whatever power they can. So worship, sacrifice, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you are absolutely correct about this, because the other players, the older players, know from fighting the god Prisina that was going to be resurrected.
Yeah.
They were trying to bring back this dead god.
Yeah.
That they had found the cult, and they had found where they were doing these sacrifices and basically feeding a section of Prisina's heart with this blood.
Right.
And the first thing my guys did when they got in there, and it was an item that they had had forever, and it was an item that I purposely gave them.
But also, like, the item itself was not, like, in a regular setting, nobody would be like, oh, this is nothing. Like,
right. It was the decanter of endless water.
Yep.
And so the first thing they did was they were like, oh, all this blood is going through all this like grooves of the stone, like towards this heart. Let's blast the blood out of the channels. And that stopped the heart from being fed.